I thought I had a perfect life, a beautiful home, and a husband who loved me, until a single silver earring led me to a restaurant and a betrayal that broke more than just my marriage. If you had asked me a month ago to describe my marriage, I would have used words like perfect, idyllic, maybe even boring, in the best possible way. Mark and I had the kind of life people put on vision boards. We had a beautiful modern house that he, as a talented architect, had designed himself. We had 2 golden retrievers, a shared love for old movies, and a comfortable routine that felt like a warm blanket. For 7 years he was my rock, my best friend, the man who kissed my forehead every morning before he left for work and texted me, "Thinking of you," every afternoon. Our life wasn't a whirlwind romance anymore. It was something deeper, more settled. It was safe, or so I thought. The change was so subtle at first, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. It started with the late nights. Mark's firm had landed a huge career-defining project, so burning the midnight oil became his new normal. I'd make him dinner, keep it warm, and eventually eat alone, falling asleep to the empty space in our bed. When he'd finally crawl in, sometimes well past 2 in the morning, he'd smell faintly of the city, not his familiar office scent of coffee and paper, but something else, something sharper. Cologne, maybe? But it wasn't the one I'd bought him for Christmas. I told myself I was being paranoid. His phone was the next thing. For 7 years, that phone had lived face up on the kitchen counter, on the nightstand, on the coffee table. Suddenly, it was always face down, or in his pocket. When a text would buzz, he'd angle his body away from me to read it, his thumb flying across the screen with a speed I'd never seen before. "Just the guys from the Henderson project," he'd mutter. "They're panicking about the zoning permits." I wanted to believe him. I really did. The alternative was a crack in the foundation of my entire world, and I wasn't ready to look into that abyss. But the little signs kept piling up, like stones in my pocket, weighing me down. He stopped complimenting the meals I cooked. He'd forget little details I told him about my day. The easy intimacy we shared, the casual touches and inside jokes, they all but vanished, replaced by a polite, almost formal distance. He was a perfect roommate, but he was no longer my husband. The breaking point, the moment my denial finally shattered, came on a Tuesday. I was cleaning out his car, getting it ready for a detailing service I'd booked as a surprise. As I was vacuuming under the passenger seat, I saw a glint of silver. I reached down and pulled it out. It was an earring, a single, delicate silver hoop with a tiny, dangling feather. It wasn't mine. My style was classic, simple gold studs. This was whimsical, bohemian, young. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked back into the house, the cold metal pressing into my palm. He was on a conference call in his home office, laughing. The sound, once my favorite in the world, now made my stomach clench with nausea. I waited until he was done, standing in the doorway with my hand clenched in a fist. When he hung up, he looked at me, and his smile faltered. "Hey, you okay? You look pale." I opened my hand. The earring lay there, a tiny, silver accusation. "I found this in your car, Mark." His eyes flickered to the earring, then back to my face. For a split second, I saw it pure, unadulterated panic, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a look of weary exasperation. "Oh, for God's sake, Sarah," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It probably belongs to Janet from marketing. I gave her and a few others a lift to that client dinner last week. She's always losing things. Are you seriously going to start this? With how stressed I am?" He made me feel insane. He twisted my genuine fear into a hysterical accusation, painting me as the nagging, suspicious wife while he was the poor, overworked husband. I crumbled. I apologized. And I hated myself for it. That night, as he slept soundlessly beside me, I lay awake, the silence of the house screaming at me. I felt profoundly alone. It made me think of the other great void in my life, my sister, Chloe. We hadn't spoken in 10 years, not since a bitter, ugly fight after our parents passed away. We were 2 halves of a whole, once inseparable, now complete strangers. She was my younger sister by 2 years, the wild child to my sensible older sibling. Over the years, my anger had faded, leaving only a hollow ache. With my marriage feeling like it was crumbling to dust, the need to reconnect with her felt urgent, visceral. My 30th birthday was in 2 weeks, and I couldn't bear the thought of celebrating it in a house that felt so empty. So with trembling hands I found her number through a cousin and I called her. The conversation was stilted at first, then emotional, then miraculously easy. We cried. We apologized. It felt like coming home. I invited her to my birthday dinner at a beautiful new restaurant downtown. "I want you to meet Mark," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I can't wait," she'd replied, her voice bright with a happiness I hadn't heard in a decade. The night of my birthday arrived. I got dressed, putting on a brave face as I stared at my reflection. Mark had come to me an hour earlier, his face a mask of regret. "Babe, I am so sorry," he'd said, kissing my cheek. "Henderson just called an emergency meeting with the investors. It's tonight. I can't get out of it. I'll make it up to you, I promise." I just nodded. The fight gone out of me. Of course he had a meeting. I drove to the restaurant alone, a hollow pit in my stomach. I was seated at a small table for two, the minutes ticking by as I waited for Chloe. To distract myself, I scanned the chic, dimly lit room. And then I saw him. Across the restaurant, tucked into a secluded corner booth, was my husband, Mark. He wasn't in a meeting with investors. He was leaning across the table, his expression intimate and focused, laughing with a woman. I couldn't see her face, only a cascade of bright blonde hair and a slender back in a dark green dress. My breath hitched in my throat. He was on a date, on my birthday. The betrayal was so sharp, so absolute, it felt like a physical blow. I was frozen, unable to move or even think. Just as I was trying to process what I was seeing, the woman at Mark's table turned her head slightly to the side, laughing at something he whispered. The light from a candle caught her profile, and my entire world stopped turning. That specific shade of blonde, that delicate jawline, and dangling from her earlobe, catching the light like a tiny winking star, was a small silver feather earring. It was the mate to the one I had found in his car. It was my sister. For a long moment I didn't breathe. My lungs seized, and the lively chatter of the restaurant faded into a dull, roaring hum in my ears. It was like watching a movie of someone else's life, a cruel, twisted drama where I was the unwitting fool. My husband and my sister, Mark and Chloe. The two people who occupied the opposite poles of my heart, the man I had built a life with, and the sister I had just started to find again. The scene in that corner booth was nauseatingly intimate. He wasn't just laughing. He was gazing at her with an intensity I hadn't seen him direct at me in years. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers, his thumb stroking her knuckles. Chloe, my wild, impulsive, beautiful little sister, tilted her head back and laughed. A bright, carefree sound that carried across the room and stabbed me right through the chest. A waitress came to my table. "Can I get you started with a drink?" she asked cheerfully. I stared at her, my mouth opening and closing like a fish, but no sound came out. My brain was short-circuiting, trying desperately to reconcile the impossible image before me with a decade of memories. My sister, the one who cried on the phone with me just last week, talking about how much she missed me and how she couldn't wait to finally meet the man I loved. It was a lie, all of it. The reconnection, the apologies, the excitement in her voice, it was all a grotesque performance. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through the shock. I couldn't be here. They couldn't see me. I stood up so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing a few curious glances. I fumbled in my purse for a $20 bill and threw it on the table, my hands shaking so badly I could barely let go of the note. I turned and walked, my legs feeling like lead, my eyes locked on the exit. I didn't dare look back at their booth. I was terrified I'd make eye contact, that I'd see a flicker of recognition, or worse, guilt on their faces. The hostess at the door gave me a concerned look. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" I just nodded numbly and pushed my way out into the cold night air. The city felt alien, the streetlights blurring through the tears that now streamed down my face. I made it to my car, locking the doors and collapsing against the steering wheel, my body racked with silent, gut-wrenching sobs. The betrayal was twofold. A monster with two heads, and both were sinking their teeth into me. Mark, my quiet, steady Mark, was a liar and a cheat. And Chloe was a vulture, picking at the bones of my life before it was even dead. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the traffic or the route. I just remember pulling into the garage of the house Mark had designed for us, for our future, and feeling like I was entering a tomb. Every object was a monument to our shared lie. The photos on the mantelpiece of us smiling on vacations, the stupid mug he bought me that said, "World's Best Wife," the scent of his cologne still lingering in the hallway. It was all a farce. I walked through the silent house, a ghost in my own life. I sat on our bed, the bed we shared, and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. It was a text from Chloe. "OMG Sarah, I am so sorry. My car totally broke down on the freeway. I've been waiting for a tow truck for an hour. I feel awful. Can we reschedule? Happy birthday, sis. Love you." The calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. She was sitting right there with him, texting me lies, building her alibi. My grief curdled into something else, something cold and hard and heavy. It settled in my gut like a stone. I didn't reply. I just put the phone down and waited. Hours passed. Around midnight, I heard his car pull into the garage. I heard the front door open and close, his familiar footsteps on the hardwood floor. He was humming a cheerful little tune as he walked into our bedroom. He stopped when he saw me, sitting upright on the bed in the dark. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. "You're still up. I thought you'd be asleep." He started unbuttoning his shirt, the picture of the dutiful husband coming home late from a stressful meeting. God, what a night. Henderson was on a warpath. "I'm so sorry I missed your dinner, babe. How was it? Did you and Chloe have a good time?" The casual way he spoke her name, the manufactured concern in his voice, it was breathtaking. I didn't move. I just watched him, my face a blank mask. He must have sensed the shift in the air, because his movements slowed. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I finally spoke, my voice devoid of all emotion. "The restaurant was lovely." He visibly relaxed. "Oh, good. I'm glad. I really wish I could have been there. I'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise. We'll do whatever you want. I saw you there, Mark. The words hung in the silence between us. He froze, his hands still on his shirt buttons. "What? What are you talking about?" A nervous laugh escaped his lips. "You must be mistaken. I was in a boardroom on the other side of town." He was still trying. Even now he was still trying to lie. I stood up from the bed, my movements slow and deliberate, and walked towards him until I was standing just a few feet away. I could smell the faint foreign scent of her perfume on him. "You were in a corner booth, near the back, with a blonde." His face went pale. Every drop of color drained from it, leaving behind a waxy, horrified sheen. He opened his mouth, a denial already forming on his lips, but I cut him off. "You know, it's a funny thing," I said, my voice as cold and sharp as broken glass. "I never got to properly introduce you to my sister, did I? But it seems you two have already met." The name, her name, hung in the air between us like a poison dart. He flinched as if it had physically struck him. The carefully constructed mask of the overworked, loving husband didn't just crack. It shattered into a million pieces, revealing the pathetic, terrified man underneath. "Sarah, how—" He couldn't even form a coherent sentence. He stumbled back, sinking onto the edge of our bed, the bed where he'd slept beside me after being with my sister. The thought was so vile it threatened to choke me. "How?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "That's a good question, Mark. Why don't you tell me? Tell me how my husband started sleeping with my sister. The sister I haven't spoken to in 10 years. The sister I was trying to bring back into my life. Our life." He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The performance was instantaneous. The tears, the self-loathing. It was all for my benefit. A desperate plea for a sympathy I no longer possessed. "It was a mistake," he mumbled into his palms. "A horrible, stupid mistake. It just happened." "Ah, don't you dare," I hissed, the cold fury in my voice making him look up, his eyes wide and red-rimmed. "Do not insult my intelligence by telling me this just happened. Nothing this calculated just happens. So you're going to sit there, and you're going to tell me everything, from the beginning. Now." He swallowed hard, looking like a cornered animal. "It was about 6 months ago," he began, his voice raspy. "Your cousin posted a photo of Chloe on social media. She's an interior design student now. She saw the article about the house, the one I designed for us. She reached out to me professionally, through my firm's website. She said she admired my work and wanted to ask some questions for a school project. Of course, it had started with our home, the one sanctuary I had left. He had invited the serpent right into our garden. She came to my office," he continued, refusing to meet my eyes. "We had coffee. We talked about design, about her school, about you. She told me how much she missed you, how she regretted the fight. The audacity was stunning. She had used my memory, our broken relationship, as a tool for her seduction." "And you believed her?" I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You sat there, my husband, listening to this stranger talk about your wife, and you just... what? Fell for it?" "It wasn't like that," he insisted, his voice pleading. "It was just talking at first. Then lunch. She was so easy to talk to. She understood the pressure I was under at work. You seemed distant." He stopped, realizing his mistake. He was trying to blame me. The rage that had been a cold stone in my gut ignited into a wildfire. "Distant!" I spat. "I was distant because my husband was coming home at 2 a.m. smelling of another woman's perfume. I was distant because the man I loved was turning into a stranger right before my eyes. You did this, Mark. You and her. Don't you dare try to lay 1 ounce of this at my feet." He flinched and fell silent. He knew he had no ground to stand on. "How many times?" I demanded. "Don't lie to me." He looked down at his hands. "A few times a week, for the last 4 months. 4 months. For a third of a year, my life had been an elaborate stage play, and I was the only one who didn't have the script. Every late night at the office, every emergency meeting, every time he'd rolled away from me in bed, it was because he'd been with her. My sister. I walked over to the closet and pulled out a suitcase, throwing it onto the bed next to him. "Pack your things." Panic flared in his eyes. "Sarah, no, please," he begged, standing up and reaching for me. "We can fix this. I'll end it. I'll never speak to her again. Please, don't throw this away. I love you." I recoiled from his touch as if he were on fire. "Your love is worthless," I said, my voice flat. "But you're not going anywhere." He stared at me, confused. "What?" "You heard me. You're not leaving. Unpack your suitcase." A sliver of hope flickered in his eyes, a hope I was about to extinguish with relish. "You're going to stay here, in this house. You're going to sleep on the couch in your office. You will come and go as you please. You will answer my calls, and you will pretend that everything is perfectly normal. You are going to play the part of my loving husband." "Why?" he whispered, his face a canvas of confusion and fear. "Because I'm not done with you," I said softly. "And I'm certainly not done with her." I turned my back on him, walked to the nightstand, and picked up my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found her name. Chloe. My finger hovered over the call button. Mark watched me, his breath held. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice trembling. I ignored him and pressed the button. It rang twice before she picked up, her voice a sickly sweet melody of fake concern. "Sarah, oh my God, I'm so glad you called. I feel so terrible about tonight. Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect, Chloe," I replied, my voice as smooth as silk. Mark was shaking his head frantically, mouthing, "Don't." "I'm sitting here with Mark. He just got home from his very important meeting." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by dead silence. "He told me everything," I continued, savoring every word. "About your school project, about the lunches, about my birthday dinner tonight." The silence stretched, thick with her panic. I could picture her perfectly, her face pale, her mind racing to formulate another lie. But I didn't give her the chance. "You know, next week is the 10th anniversary of Mom and Dad's death. I was thinking it's high time we had a proper family reunion, a memorial lunch, at their favorite place by the lake. I want you to be there, and I want you to bring your new boyfriend. I'm dying to finally meet him." The silence on the other end of the line was so profound, I could practically hear the gears in Chloe's head grinding to a halt. When she finally spoke, her voice was a strangled whisper, stripped of all its earlier saccharine charm. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," I said, my voice dripping with false cheer. "A family memorial. It'll be lovely. Just us. And your new man, of course. Don't be shy. I'm sure Mark is just as excited to meet him as I am." I glanced at my husband, who was now a statue of pure terror, his face ashen. "Aren't you, darling?" I asked sweetly. He could only manage a jerky, terrified nod. I hung up the phone before Chloe could stammer out another pathetic denial. The week that followed was a master class in psychological warfare. Mark lived in our house like a ghost. He slept on the couch in his office, as I'd commanded, and crept around the edges of my life. He'd make coffee in the morning and leave a mug for me on the counter, a silent, desperate offering. He'd text me from work, asking if I needed anything. He was pathetically, transparently obedient, hoping his good behavior could somehow earn him forgiveness. But there was no forgiveness in me. There was only a cold, methodical purpose. I was a general planning a final decisive battle, and he was my unwilling soldier. The day of the memorial lunch was bright and sunny, a cruel mockery of the storm that was about to break. The lakeside restaurant was a place filled with our happiest childhood memories, picnics with our parents, skipping stones on the water. Now I was about to turn it into a graveyard for my marriage and my relationship with my sister. I chose my outfit carefully, a severe dark blue dress, morning attire. Mark stood by the door in a suit, looking like a man on his way to his own execution. He tried to speak as we drove. "Sarah, please don't do this. Let's just deal with this privately. It's too much." "Is it?" I replied, not taking my eyes off the road. "Is it more than coming home to your wife after sleeping with her sister? More than lying to my face on my birthday? I don't think so. You lost the right to ask me for anything." He fell silent. When we arrived, I saw Chloe's car already in the parking lot. My heart gave a painful lurch. For a fleeting second, I wanted to turn back, to pretend none of this had happened. But then I remembered the earring, the lies, the humming, and the cold resolve settled back into my bones. We walked in. The hostess led us to a table on the patio, overlooking the sparkling water. And there she was. Chloe was sitting alone, twisting a napkin in her hands. She looked awful. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she'd lost weight. She looked up as we approached, and her eyes widened in horror when she saw Mark walking behind me. She had clearly hoped, prayed, that I was bluffing, that he wouldn't actually be here. I smiled a predator's smile. "Chloe, so glad you could make it." I sat down, and Mark, after a moment's hesitation, took the chair beside me. Not across from me, but beside me, a united front. The irony was so thick you could taste it. "Where's your new boyfriend?" I asked, opening my menu. "I was so looking forward to meeting the man who's made you so happy." Chloe just stared at Mark, her expression a toxic cocktail of fury and fear. "Sarah, can we please not do this here?" she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "This is a special place for us." "It was," I corrected her. "You and he took a sledgehammer to every special place, every memory. So here we are, in the rubble." A waiter came to take our order. The sheer excruciating awkwardness of it was almost comical. We ordered food we wouldn't eat, our voices strained and polite. As soon as he left, Chloe turned on Mark. "You told her," she hissed, her eyes blazing with betrayal. "You actually told her everything." Mark flinched, looking to me for help, but I just watched, impassive. "He did," I answered for him. "He was very thorough. Told me all about your professional interest in his work, about how you used Mom and Dad, used your supposed regret over our fight to get close to him, to get close to my husband." Chloe's face crumpled. "You don't understand," she whimpered. "I fell in love with him." I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and broken. "Love? You don't know the first thing about love. You are a thief. You saw a life you wanted, and instead of building one for yourself, you decided to steal mine. You went after the one person in the world you knew would destroy me." I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just slide into my life, take my husband, and I would just disappear? Her pathetic defense crumbled, replaced by a venomous spite. He was miserable with you, she spat, her words a desperate final volley. You were boring, you were a routine. I made him feel alive. Did you? I turned my head slowly to look at Mark, whose face had gone completely white. Is that what she did, Mark? Make you feel alive? He looked from my cold, unforgiving eyes to Chloe's desperate, pleading ones. For the first time, he seemed to see her for what she was, not an exciting escape, but the architect of his ruin. He shook his head, a single, decisive motion. No, he said, his voice cracking. She made me a coward and a fool. That was it. That was the final nail. Chloe stared at him, her mouth agape, the ultimate betrayal hitting her. He had chosen a side, and it wasn't hers. I stood up, my napkin placed neatly on the table. Well, I said, my voice calm and clear. This has been illuminating. I have a divorce lawyer's number for you, Mark. I suggest you use it. We will sell the house. As for you, Chloe, I looked down at my sister, my little sister, who now looked so small and pathetic. I reconnected with you because I thought a part of my family was missing. I was wrong. The part that was missing died 10 years ago. I don't know who you are, and I have no desire to find out. Goodbye. I turned and walked away, not looking back. I didn't need to. I could feel their stunned silence behind me. I walked out of the restaurant, past the lake where we'd skipped stones, and into the bright, unforgiving sunlight. The pain was still there, a deep, cavernous wound. But for the first time in months I felt something else too. I felt free. The house sold quickly. Mark moved out. I never saw Chloe again. The road ahead was long, but it was mine. I had walked through fire and emerged on the other side alone, but whole. I had lost a husband and a sister, but I had found myself again.